Hi, everybody. Today's Thursday, January 22nd, 2026, and our dear friend or brother, Andrei Martyanov, is here with us. Welcome back, Andrei.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, last time we talked, we had some sort of technical issues here. You remember we
Yep.
had the internet
Yeah.
connection, all these problems. Yeah. And I want to apologize to our audience because on that day I didn't have the opportunity to say that, to apologize. And to you as well, Andre, because
Oh
we were
no, there's
ready
not.
to
You
do
don't
it.
have to apologize to me. It was just fine. I know.
Andre, let's start with what is happening in Europe. Europe
Hmm.
is experiencing something so tough, so serious that they have not experienced before. That is the reality of power politics, the reality of what the United States is playing right now. What is your understanding of Europe today? And are they getting to the point to change their policies, or they want to double down on what they have been doing and they have been failing, to be honest?
Well, it's a good question actually. But they want to double down, despite the fact that they suddenly start, sending those messages that, oh yeah, we need to talk to Moscow and things like that. The problem is to double down with something. You have to have something to double down it with. And it doesn't. Europe doesn't have anything in terms of militarily. It's pathetic, and it's totally dependent on the United States. Not that the United States is much better. We also saw basically the military aspect of this situation unfolding in Ukraine, and now, of course, United States is forced to do what it's doing, despite the fact that very many people will attribute it to Trump only. It's not just Trump only. It's basically generally consensus, foreign policy consensus, because United States, in order to avoid the bankruptcy and insolvency, has to, and to do something, grandiose, like, get Greenland or something like that. Vladimir Putin yesterday, obviously, he trolled it beautifully. Many people probably wouldn't even understand how he was trolling it, but it was, I was laughing. I mean, so, but the point is that Europe is done as the geopolitical entity. I've been talking about it for second decade now, that they are object, they're not a subject of the international relations. And now it's time for them to start, basically going for the jugular of each other. That's France, Germany, what have you. Let them do it. And if it comes down to, in the end, to killing each other, they might as well do it, that, because that's what they have been doing successfully for very many centuries. Okay, so in this case, it's basically we looking at the, well, I would use Churchill. It's not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning, essentially. That, yeah, that's the new world. Europe is irrelevant in this case, because the only thing which matters is the real economy and the real military industrial might. And as much as we are sad to say, and Russian diplomats speak about it nonstop, that, yeah, the international law and things of this nature, we are in the world of power politics. And some people say it might is right. Well, you have to have actual real might. But the United States has definitely the, dominion over these Europeans who are cowardly and corrupt, utterly corrupt. And so that's the end of the West as we know it. So, and I've been talking about it for many years, and here it is. That's in front of us, and yeah, that's it's not Trump's narcissism notwithstanding, but as I already stated, United States, Trump in many respects represents very many people in the United States, and this is how United States is Europe.
Yeah. Do you believe, Andre, what Donald Trump is doing, considering the big picture? What is happening in his mind? What is the strategy? Is there something to be called strategy? Is that something, the strategy of chaos? Is that, because whatever is happening, all these fronts, considering all these fronts from Venezuela, South America, coming to Ukraine, and then to the West Asia, you see some sort of chaos, but there may be some sort of, you know, objectives that the Trump administration is seeking. But after all, considering all together, do you think they're going to achieve what they have in their mind?
Oh, they achieved something in Venezuela in the sense that Venezuela is now totally subjugated, and all this nonsensical talk about that. Oh, yeah, somebody will come and change something in Venezuela. Russians have been wrapping up the business actually in Venezuela for the last 5 years. For those people who do not know, the Russian presence there is minimal, and they try to help Maduro at some point of time. But you saw yourself that, well, yeah, the new power, they just communicate just lovely with Trump administration. So Venezuela is a goner. Nothing could be done about it because they just surrendered. And the fact that they show some demonstrations there, yeah, they can demonstrate whatever the hell they want. I mean, nothing gonna change. But that's the other thing. Venezuela is not that critical, although evidently it hits China in some sense. But reality is the big thing is obviously not Venezuela. It's the Greenland. And Greenland is big, not in the sense of military, or there is a serious military aspect to all that, especially considering the fact that United States has been present militarily in Greenland for many decades, and even during the World War II, and it's nothing new. They need the possession of Venezuela for a simple reason. It doubles essentially, well, not doubles, it's about 80% of the present ownership of the United States of the Arctic shelf, and that, well, almost doubles it, and that's a lot of riches. But obviously, as you correctly stated, there are some people, naive people, who constantly go around talk about like, oh yeah, organized chaos. United States doesn't have a strategy of organized chaos. Well, there isn't. Well, it does have it. The problem is it never is capable to control this chaos. For some reason, they sell this garbage like some kind of the omnipotence of the United States. It's not. It's militarily. It's a paper tiger, and it still can obviously much stronger than Europe, and it can, what, if it comes down to Greenland, United States can easily do the military. Yeah, there is a population of 57,000 of native people and about one company of, well, Denmark says it will send 1,000 people. Okay, whatever, I think US Marines will have, a fun time dealing with that. But the point is that United States needs something which can preserve it as the, in a sense, entity, military, economical, political entity in the essentially the yeah, people call it Monroe Doctrine 2.0. Well, maybe, but yeah, Western hemisphere, they think that's their part, their ownership of this hemisphere. And yes, in Western hemisphere, United States is strongest economically and militarily power, and nothing could be changed about it. And we have to also say, and I know for many people it will be very unpleasant to hear, but Latin America is not getting underneath from the United States because evidently the Venezuela is one of the exhibit A. You can do it pretty much anywhere there in Latin America. You can buy out elites. And fact is, as most of the Latin American politicians, they have to go out, and especially military, with the price tag. So just they have the price tag. That's how much I worth. Just buy me, and that's what it is. It's just the way things are. But obviously, the other part of the world, that's a whole other story. United States controls realistically nothing there. And you're in Tehran, in Iran now. The skies over Tehran are buzzing with the transport planes right now. China finally decided to say, okay, here we are. Let's stop, condemning things. Let's do things. And majority of the transport planes are not even from Russia, albeit there's Russian IL-76s and Antonov 124 flying in. But it's Chinese transport aviation delivering whatever they deliver. It's not air defense complexes because Iranians simply do not have time to basically learn the Chinese air defense complexes, which didn't perform that well in during Indo-Pakistani clash. But something else is being delivered. Whatever is being delivered, I don't know. But finally, China is starting to move as what everybody would expect, from China to just go and actively participate in the essentially shaping of the new world, especially militarily. So that's what we know so far. But other than that, United States is not a contender anymore in Europe. It cannot fight war in Europe. The essentially military mythology of the United States have been completely demolished by Russia. And the only thing which is left is what Clausewitz stated: the main object of any war is to compel the enemy to do our will. Russian will is, as we spoke many times before, is to talk to the United States and make the arrangements. Europe is irrelevant. It's existential enemy of Russia, and Russians pretty much speak about it openly. And even Kirill Dmitriev, the special envoy of Vladimir Putin on the negotiations with Mr. Witkov, he posted yesterday a wonderful post with X about Davos. It's a circus, okay? Simple as that.
Andrei, you've mentioned the case of Iran, and as you've mentioned, I'm right now in Tehran. But what is going on in terms of the attack? And every time, yesterday, Wall Street Journal reported that they're sending a lot of fighter jets to the region. Aircraft carriers. One of them has arrived. In my opinion, it seems that arrived in the region. They're preparing, and you see the Iranians are preparing. Every time you talk with officials, they're saying that they're preparing everything to fight back to defend Iran.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the military operation, I don't understand it, Andre. I don't see Iran being in a weak position right now, as it was during the initial hours of the attack, Israeli attack on Iran. They were surprised somehow by the
Yeah,
attack.
we know what was
Right
there. Yeah.
now, they're not going to be surprised. This is not going to happen anymore. They tried to manipulate the Iranian society from within with these riots. They couldn't achieve that. I don't know what else can they do. Are they gonna nuke Iran?
No, I mean, there are many people who want to do that to Iran, especially APAC crowd, those nut jobs, and especially bunch of this, what so-called Christian Zionists, the main driving force of the United States being nothing more than extension of Israel. So they would like, because they're stupid, they are very uneducated people, and they are brainwashed. No, it's not that. It's the fact that they have to do something. We know that it was Russia which mediated between Iran and Israel this recently, that there will be no mutual attacks and things of this nature, at least for a while. And that was a very net positive for Iran, because it allows it, and Iranians are now fully, as you correctly stated, aware of what might come. Obviously, one aircraft carrier group it's a joke. They certainly can attack and try to do deal some damage, but it's nothing. In order to fight Iran, United States needs to mobilize. Okay, United States doesn't have means, but what it can do is traditional American, so to speak, military strategy: hurl everything you have at somebody, and what, basically, essentially wait for the result, if it will bring any result. And obviously, we have to understand that Israel still continues to, it manipulates, it's not manipulates, it owns America's foreign policy. And so there is a preparation, but as already have been stated, uh, the only thing they can do is the standoff weapons. That's it. Very few people actually probably want to, in U.S. military and U.S. Air Force or carrier-borne aviation, to get inside the airspace of Iran and deliver some kind of bomb or short-range weaponry, because you immediately will be detected. And so they will try to do what they think they are good at, which they are not. It's called SIAD, suppression of enemy air defense. But Iran is not Iraq, and so there's a lot of diplomatic hustling right now behind the stage, so to speak, behind the curtain. And Russians and Chinese now playing for delaying it as much as possible to prepare Iran. But Iranians, yeah, they proved that they have very decent air defense, and the only way they could do it initially, like last time, was to essentially do the sabotage. That's what they are good at. It wasn't actually the suppression of air defense, which after that started to work. First went out on 70%, and then just increased their efficiency as the day unfolded at that time. So, and of course, everybody understands that this time Iran will just basically smash or blow Israel to smithereens if they continue to do what they're doing. So Israel is, and especially American military bases, yeah, they were returning, from what I heard recently, they were returning personnel back to American bases in the region. So, which is a good sign, because obviously the United States doesn't want to risk considering the American air defense, which is not really air defense. You might not as well have it. So they are defenseless there. And so the fact that they return personnel indicates probably that they do not want to attack Iran, and they do all those, how to say, motions, if you wish. And Iran is not Venezuela, okay? Iran is a serious country, and it's a serious civilization, and so there is no way that they can send some, Delta Force, which they tried it before. We know how it all ended up, and so. Point is that we have to wait and see. But yes, Iran is getting ready, and Russia and China help big time.
Yeah. Andre, Donald Trump said something during his speech at Davos. When he was talking about Greenland, he somehow mentioned Iceland. He was confusing the two. But we know maybe Iceland is in the background. Maybe they're thinking of Iceland as well, because Iceland has a lot. You know what's so amazing, Andre, to me, that the United States, instead of finding a way to compete, to have a better relationship with other countries, to compete with China, they're trying to, or with the East. The whole East is at war with the United States, as we talk today. And instead of that, they're trying to grab lands from Europeans who were their partners. It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, you have to understand the intellectual level of current American elites. We see the precipitous decline of the always mediocre, strategic vision in the part of the United States. Much of it is built on the mythology of the omnipotence, while in reality, obviously, United States is good only at fighting, yeah, that stealing, kidnapping the leader of the impotent country like Venezuela, which didn't even react, so it's okay, yeah, sure, there you go. But the reality is, these are all PR primarily issues, but United States cannot fight realistically, but it can use its military political weight, obviously, against such places like Greenland. I mean, hello, 57,000 population, okay, primarily native Inuit people, and as if it's true, evidently Donald Trump is ready to pay $1 million per person to get Greenland into the United States lab. I was wondering, the friend is asking, how can I get the Greenland's residence? I will, so I'm joking, of course. No, I mean, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing, it's not like the imperialism of the 20th century, early or late 19th century, or even middle 19th century with, the cannons, all those cannon boats. And no, it doesn't work like this. And so they have this very outdated idea about the, you know, history in general, because that primarily, if you look attentively of people or at people who write those strategies, they're highly uneducated, highly uncultured people. They live in this world that United States somehow saved the universe. In reality, is United States is the actually newcomer very inexperienced militarily, and they will be grabbing land. They think that that gets them somewhere. I specifically singled out Greenland because Greenland makes total sense from the, let's put it this way, cynical and, cold hard facts, point of view, that yeah, you want this Arctic shelf, despite the fact that United States cannot build a single modern icebreaker. And whatever they try to do with Finland, it's not enough to operate in Arctic. Somebody has to explain it to Trump and to those people. But nonetheless, you can see at least some logic behind it. The rest of it, Iceland, I don't know. It's yeah, I understand Iceland doesn't have really any kind of armed forces, police maybe, So yeah, that will be easy if they decide to do that. I mean, other than that, Europe, which is obviously relates to both Iceland. Iceland is a considered European country, and and you look attentively at the realm of European realm. It's one imperialist substituting the other, except one thing: Russians kicked out French out of Sahel, so that's why Macron cannot forgive Russians for doing this. So and yeah, it's power politics, and it's also arrangements between three superpowers: United States, Russia, and China. How they will kind of arrange the world, and after that, we might start talking about something which we can, term modus vivendi. Not so much as international law, but modus vivendi, and then maybe at some point of time, depending on how the crisis in the United States resolves itself, because United States is a bankrupt country essentially. So we can see after that where we will go with this. But we are in the new world where European influence is next to nothing. And we have, again, three superpowers which sit on the top of the world. United States is declining superpower. Russia is ascending. China is already established itself as the industrial powerhouse, and they are the workshop basically of the world. Together with Southeast Asia, let's not overestimate that Chinese do everything. No, there are very many very large countries like Indonesia, Philippines, things like that, which are participant on this what you can call today international division of labor, but it's not anymore division of labor even. It's somewhat different. Russia is taking care of militarily on this thing, and now you have India also ascending. So it's a complex, in a sense. It seems simple, but in reality, it's a complex architecture, especially the rest of the world, non-Western world. It's very complex dynamics there, and the Western world, that's the other thing. We need to view United States now not really as a Western country. United States is a civilization unto itself. It's like Russia. Yes, somebody stated that Russia is the civilization masquerading as the country. Same goes for the United States. United States is not a European country anymore. It is totally unique civilization with its all huge problems. Make no mistake. But that's what happens, and that's what forms their civilizationally three, in reality even probably four, poles of power. And we'll have to see how it evolves. But I think Russian diplomats will obviously talk about international law, UN charter, but reality is it's going to be based on the modus vivendi and how it's going to be arranged.
Andre, I think what Donald Trump is trying to do with this new concept of, the countries of gathering of peace, and he's bringing these countries all together, and it seems that he's trying to replace UN. He
Yeah,
knows that the UN is not working. That's why he's trying to do this. He's trying to make an alternative to what is happening with what is already happening with BRICS, with SCO, and all of that. He's trying to make a
yeah.
new sort of institution. But after all, looking at what he's doing, do you think he's gonna achieve that? He's gonna
No, no, it's a typical Trump thing. It's a Trump's casino, just like shiny with all those neon lights and what selling the fake, uh, uh, basically pirate gold, which is of course not real gold. No, it's all PR. Everybody laughs at it, except that he can get some small country. He actually wants to make money on this. You need to pay the $1 billion or whatever. This is a preposterous idea, essentially. So no, but it's just distraction. It's typical Trump, narcissist, completely out of touch, with the reality. But whatever is going to happen in terms of the arrangement, whatever the institutions will be in place, whatever the BRICS and especially Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is actually more important than BRICS if you think about it, it's kind of security extension of BRICS. But whatever Shanghai Cooperation Organization decides to play, that will be the way to go. And already institutions are becoming like totally emergent institutions of BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, including independent financial system. So no matter what Trump does, he can do nothing about it. The only tool United States had, and still they think they have it at his disposal, they have it against Europeans, for example. But they don't have this tool against basically what wrongly called global south. Russia is not global south, but we're talking about BRICS. Let's talk BRICS. Uh, United States was this threat of military power. You cannot go and threaten militarily Russians. Russians will laugh in your face. So same goes for China. They still pretend that they want to fight Chinese, and So, but reality is this is military economic monster. This basically couple, Moscow and Beijing. So it's United States simply doesn't even register there realistically, So and the only thing they can do is to huff and puff, and stamp their chest. But the alternative financial system and alternative political institutions already are emergent. They are essentially already in place. They just developing now, and so Trump's attempt to do this thing is just like ridiculous thing to return something under U.S. control. United States doesn't control the world. Period. It doesn't have resources. It doesn't have this might, which it always claimed but never had. And as the result, again, it was completely dispelled. This mythology. You saw yourself that it's United States has an essentially obsolete military, and especially in terms of the table of organization and equipment. And now they have, United States has to face this reality. It's not premier military power. And even as we already mentioned, yeah, whatever is, single aircraft carrier battle group can do against, Iran. Not much, really. They will get those couple of the Arleigh Burke. Maybe they get another Ticonderoga class. What do you have? 96 plus 96 plus 120. Add them together, roughly, 310 divided by half. 150 Tomahawks they can launch. Iran will just shake it off like nothing. So what else they can do? Do the those alpha strikes from you don't have enough. And again, unlike Venezuela, which didn't even fight back, I mean, they just sold their president. As simple as that. Iran can launch anti-shipping missiles, which can reach this carrier battle group very far from into the Indian Ocean. So there you go. So what are you gonna do? Well, that's what we observe now, this huffing and puffing, moving all those assets. They might then at some point of time do some kind of strike, but again, we know what's going to happen. Israel will be beaten into the into utter submission, because no matter what kind of the so-called air defense they try to provide for Israel, it doesn't work. And the rest of it is like this battleship Trump class. It's mad in serious militaries with smirk and ironic laughter. So what can I say? But yeah, Trump works the audience, and his audience, we know what his audience is, and he needs to do it. He has a midterms coming, And not that I mean, for the love of God, I mean, I will never vote Democrat, no matter what. I would rather stay home. It's uniparty. They're just bunch of the different neoliberal, nut jobs from GOP or from Democrats. Democrats more satanic, so because with this woke agenda and all this just ridiculous things. But that's the situation. Trump also has the a burden of the midterms, and he needs to deliver something. What can possibly he can deliver? Greenland is the gift, because you have to understand, this is it is huge. I mean, in a sense that, yes, suddenly, and he will say, look at me, look at this, this is my legacy. I gave you the double, basically your assets in Arctic, which is the indeed crown jewel of our planet, with all those immense riches. And it's not just gas and oil only. There are so many other things, including some ores and things of this nature. So that's gonna make an impression, of course, and nothing wrong with that, So I mean, it's wrong from any point of view. It's obviously a violation of any kind of the international law. It's sheer bullying and sheer imperialism. But it works. It works for the domestic audience, and that's how it will go, probably. I may, of course, be mistaken, but looks like everybody think the same thing. He's gonna get Greenland.
I think it's tragic, Andre, to see that everything is being sacrificed because of domestic policy in the United States.
Yeah,
Everything, you can understand it as time goes by, because Vladimir Putin various times talked about this thing. He said
yeah.
how the domestic policy of the United is hitting everybody all around the world, and this is a huge issue, I think, and they
Oh,
have
it's
to find a
absolutely,
solution.
it's tragic issue for the United States too, because United States cannot formulate proper, sensible strategy in the foreign affairs. As the result, as we saw many times, you saw the catastrophe of Afghanistan, you saw the catastrophe of Iraq, you saw the catastrophe of Vietnam, in Korea, and you go begin to look at it. United States didn't win a single war; it loses them, and sometimes loses catastrophically, to the point that the whole world begins to laugh at it. But yet they still go around saying that, oh yeah, we're great military. No, you are not. So you don't understand how it works. You cannot formulate this and basically control this critical juncture between the actual diplomacy and the military power, which are two critical elements of the global stance of any government or any country. United States doesn't have it. It doesn't have people who can do it. I mean, the last one who could do it was James Baker, Secretary of the State. He was a diplomat's diplomat. He was a man who was respected. He was respected by the Soviets, and you saw yourself that time, old, guard of the American diplomacy, which at least was educated enough and, cultured enough to understand that, hey, we have to kind of tread things very cautiously. No, that's gone. I mean, look at them. You have a bunch of the cretins with the credentials idiots from the, whatever, Georgetown or what have you, who go out there and perform the basically, I don't know, trapeze act. You look at them like they are not jobs, and that's who they are, because those American higher education, in terms of the preparation of the elites, is completely broken. It doesn't work. All those Harvards, all those, as I already stated, Georgetowns and what have you, Columbia universities, it's pathetic. They won't even be able to study in Russian universities or Chinese universities, because they will not pull it off intellectually. But that's what they do. They dumb down everything to the point that they are brainwashed ideologues. And some exceptions, of people, even from, like, Jeffrey Sachs. He comes out and he protests. Okay, you are the only guy, and I'm the only guy. Or there are a few others, who go out and, say that, look at that, this is pathetic. But you have to look at the core of the problem, root cause, so to speak. Root cause is American elites are dumb. Simple as that, so to speak. You look at Congress, you look at those think tanks, good Lord, they are militarily, historically, and other incompetent. And so American military is just Russians openly laugh at it. So especially when you look attentively at what you get in terms of the officer corps from the service academies, they really come out believing that they're greatest fighting force in history, and then they encounter real war. They cannot even understand. They don't have toolkit to grasp what is going on. And we're talking about complex issues of the not just the history, military history, or doctrinal views. We're looking at the pure tactical operational matters. They don't understand what they're doing. Look at those generals. Look at American generals. If you want to discredit United States military, let American generals speak. The whole world will laugh, and actually not will, the whole world laughs. And so that's what we have. This is catastrophe. This is systemic crisis, of which I wrote 4 books. And now when you have this situation, and of course the so to speak, the main point, the fulcrum of it all, is what is happening in Ukraine, which is ceasing to exist as we speak. The best anti-Russian RAM, the best essentially proxy combined West had after Hitler. So, and you can see yourself, it's utter failure. It's destruction. They killed the country. That's the suicide by cop. Europe is dead because of that. And United States, yeah, it can. Mr. Trump can run around, shaking the fist in the air, what have you. Nobody is quaking in the boots. Nobody is afraid of the United States. And so that's the situation, which was precipitated by this last idiotic step by those incompetent, brainwashed ideologues in State Department like Victoria Nuland, all those CIA MI6 guys who won't be allowed to mow the lawn somewhere, in the competent country. And so you saw the result. They thought that they got Russia by the gonads in 2014 with this Maidan coup, and essentially bringing Nazis to the power in Ukraine and then arming them to the hilt. Boy, as I already stated, very uncultured, very uneducated people. They don't understand what they're dealing with, and they will not, because they don't have the toolkit, and you need to have the objective view of yourself. You cannot expect it from most of the American generals, or for that matter, from those CIA guys, who still think that, well, they don't even know how to properly spy anymore. So there you go.
Yeah. Andre, every time we hear Steve Witkoff or someone in the Trump administration, since they took power, they're saying we are this close to reach an agreement in Ukraine. But what is the interpretation? I think we can hear the reality of what's going on in Ukraine and the negotiations between Russians and Americans from the Russian sources. What are they, the Russian sources are talking about, and how do they see the situation right now?
Well, yes, I repeat it non-stop. Russians will talk to the United States. It's noblis oblige. It's essentially your position basically compels you to talk to superpowers, to nuclear superpowers. And it's the joint responsibility of the United States and Russia to make sure that nothing happens, God forbids, which will end the human civilization. But in terms of American foreign policy, as I already stated, it is sheer PR. There's no substance there. Never was. Well, there was long time ago. So today it's just game of the PR. Trump needs it. He still believes that he can somehow change the outcomes. He can't. He doesn't have military or economic or whatever any other leverage. What can they do? To do new sanctions on Russians? Russians love them off. So yeah, you can do whatever you want. It just basically accelerates the complete decline of the United States. And that's what they do not understand in the United States. Maybe some do. There are some certain circles who understand this, that United States stands to gain much more cooperating with Russia and China than being hostile, and belligerent. But the point is, remember when it all started? It's a year old, and Russians will continue to pull gonads of this cat as long as necessary because they repeat it ad nauseam, and I will have the blister on my tongue repeating it over and over again. That what is the key phrase always? Root causes. Simple as that. What are root causes? NATO expansion, and as Russians repeated also ad nauseam, we're ready to talk as long as we talk to each other as equals and with proper respect. Europeans cannot deliver it. Evidently, Trump tries. And again, we talk about Trump. Trump is the collective Trump. He's totally misinformed about everything. So he is being basically run in circles by the so-called American intelligence thing, which is not so much intelligence as the deep state ideologues. And even if they wanted to, they probably will not understand what they're dealing with. So but at least he tries. He recognizes in Vladimir Putin, at least in Trump's view, very potent, opponent. And Trump being narcissist, he needs to kind of realize himself through talking to somebody, just the guy who he thinks he's equal to him. Well, in reality, of course, Trump is just the passing, whiff, so to speak. In reality, comparing to what Vladimir Putin and Russia accomplished, especially in the last 10 years, 12 years. And so, what is going to happen? That we'll continue to talk, but reality is Russian demands are well known. And it's for nobody talks about Crimea anymore. It's for those oblasts, which Russians, by the way, approaching now Zaporozhye, and they moved another 8 kilometers yesterday in Kharkov. So the Kharkov oblast, which wasn't in the plan, Russians are deep in it, together with other places like Sumy Oblast, and so it's a buffer zone. But what is buffer zone? Well, essentially that will be Russian controlled territories. And of course, the key issue here, removal of the political regime of Kiev and denazification. When you have Mr. Orban, Viktor Orban, speaking openly about that Germans in Europe are in charge of this basically, well, revival of this Nazism. And so Russians know it, and Viktor Orban essentially stated the way how Russians view it. So it's a complex dynamics, but in the end, as we already spoke before, as sad as it is, might is right. Might, correlation of forces and means decides everything. And battlefield is the main, so to speak, generator of the power and influence in globally today. And so Russians do what they do. They defeat enemies one after another, and they've been at it for 1,000 years. So somebody has to tell Trump that NATO is not even the strongest. So it just I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. Can we call what's going on in Ukraine as a total collapse because the state is not working? The energy people are, the infrastructure is not there anymore, and the army is failing. The
Yeah.
manpower is not there anymore. Europeans are out of weapons. They don't have weapons to send it to Ukraine. And what else? What else? This is a
No, nothing.
desperate situation.
Yeah, it's done. It's, as I already stated, the done deal. It just Russians were ready to talk until the June 2023. After June 2023 and this famous counteroffensive, which evidently has been planned by amateurs from Pentagon and British general staff and this Wiesbaden group, we know what happened. Russians looked at it. They obviously defeated it with catastrophic losses for Ukraine and NATO. There was already very many NATO personnel on the ground there. And after that, it was like, okay, we'll start to, you know, tightening the screws. Then, of course, Kursk happens. And after that, there would have been no, and there is no real, acceptance of any European voice and American demands. And yeah, as already stated, Vladimir Putin, honestly, for all his humanism, and he's a kind man, although he could be very tough, he doesn't care that much about Ukraine. He cares about Russia. He stated many times he is in charge of the lives and well being of 156 million people. Simple as that. And if anybody thinks that somehow he will, for any some stupid humanist reasons, exchange it for some kind of the arrangement, with Ukraine, that it will continue to be a threat to Russia, I have a breach to sell. If it comes down to annihilation of the Ukrainian statehood, it will be annihilated. Russia has all means to do that. Oh, and again, you have uncultured, uneducated people in Pentagon, CIA, MI6, Chatham House, what have you. They thought that if Russians move slowly, that it is because of some, I don't know, whatever they were thinking. You see, you cannot explain to them that, guys, you go back to the elementary school and study history, and go back and study real military operational art, how operations are planned. They perceived it as weakness because that's how dumb they are. And as I already stated, I don't need to go around here, look at the basically BS they spew in people like Kellogg, Beth Hodges, Petraeus, or Keane, what have you. These are incompetent people. So that's the officer corps in general, which advised everybody. And same goes for CIA. They perceive the slowness and deliberate approach to this as some kind of, well, they educated themselves primarily from the movie Patton. They never watched the obviously Russian Soviet epos, which is called Liberation, which makes this movie pattern look like a backwater. But they would know that if need be, Russians can do. Well, Russians invented deep operations. Okay, they just didn't need to do it this time. The task, especially after 2023, when the situation with the so-called counteroffensive, they failed miserably. I'm talking about Ukraine and NATO. It was physical annihilation of the Ukrainian personnel. Period. And that's what Russians do extremely well. You don't need to go to and grab some land. That's not how wars work. They work as Clausewitz, I already stated, is to compel the enemy to do our will. How do you compel the enemy? You physically annihilate it. You deal so much pain that at some point of time, if not, well, I have this one famous one liner from Joseph Stalin. If the enemy doesn't surrender, it has to be annihilated. Simple as that. And this is exactly what's happening. It's just that those people in Pentagon and in NATO headquarters, they never experienced that. They don't know what war is. And so they had the fairy tales written for them by basically defeated Wehrmacht and SS generals, and they think that they know what was happening. No, this is the Eastern Front, boys and girls, and this is how it's done. And as a result, yes, it's not just the army Russians annihilated, because today, in the latest news, there are some horrendous losses on Ukrainian part, because they are basically killing now very many what is called 18-24 program, which is of course what a drafting of the 18-year-olds. These are children, and Russians kill them, yeah. And they now say, oh my God, we have so many corpses of the kids, basically, how do you think how good those 18-year-old kids are who went through the 3 day or even 1 week so-called combat training by NATO instructors? They're useless. They're useless against this firepower, and especially development of the operational means of the combat control and management of the battlefield, which is the best in the world. And so what you have, yeah, they say from Sumy, we moved ahead and like, oh my God, these are kids there, so
Mhm.
that's what it is. What's next? The rest of the female population of Ukraine. Now, it doesn't matter if they return those 2 million immigrants, 2 million Ukrainian men who are hiding now in Europe back to Ukraine. First, they cannot live in Ukraine anymore, considering the fact what is happening there. And then you cannot make army out of it. To create real army, you need a decade. You need something which, a real training. What you have is cannon fodder, useless. They give them, Kalashnikov, whatever, AK-74, give them some kind of the jacket, and throw them into the meat grinder. Their life expectancy there is in hours. Simple as that.
Andre, we know that the U.S. you know strategy, the document, as they call it, security strategy of the United
Yeah,
States under the Trump administration is basically focused on the Western Hemisphere. They're talking about
yeah,
America, the South America, North America. But when you see the Prime Minister of Canada talking that the rules-based international
yeah.
order is not working anymore, it seems that even in the Western Hemisphere they're failing. And if Canada doesn't feel that much of closeness to the United States, who else can feel that?
Oh, nobody, albeit I can tell you one thing, the national security strategy, which was the document of which I actually made a video about it. It was obviously a revolutionary document in many respects, because essentially it's the stating of the fait accompli and the United States retiring from the global, or at least attempts, global domination, whatever they call it. It never really globally dominated, but and in a sense that is revolutionary. But Canada, yeah, I mean, what can I say? I live next to Canada. Seattle is just a couple of hours of drive from essentially the border, and then you go through the arch and go to Vancouver if you need to. Not that I want to anymore, but the point is that. Yeah, there is a talk, and even some people talk about that. The partisan movement. Canadian partisans. It's almost, it's almost like Canadian bacon comedy. Okay, so but the truth is, Canada, by the policies of the Canada, it's a failing country essentially. So because they impose this whatever the woke agenda, all kinds of things of this nature there. And you know what? Yeah, what can I say? No, United States, I don't think it will go and get Canada, so it's definitely not Greenland. But yeah, Carney stated that it's a rupture. It is a rupture. It is. It's just complete collapse of the everything we knew. Like REM song, "It's the end of the world as we know it." And I feel fine. I feel fine because for me, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's what I was talking about for the last many years. And here it is. There you go. You don't have to go anymore and say that, oh yeah, everybody talks, but what's happening? Nothing happens. Well, everything is happening right now. So guys, it's as famous principle, first slow, 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 and then suddenly everything at once. This is exactly what is happening now. I doubt that United States wants Canada, but Canada, well, essentially, truth is, it's the suburbia of United States. It's the countries of even when you go to Canada through our Billingham checkpoint on the border. Uh, Whenever we travel to Canada, we usually travel through the eastern part, like Montana, Glacier National Park, and things of this nature, which are easy. It's a major checkpoint, and there are essentially the letters, so to speak, emblazoned on these arches, I believe, is the daughters of the same mother, or something like that, two sisters of the same mother. That's what it means. That, yeah, the Great Britain gave the birth to the United States and obviously Canada. So it is the very similar culture. So it's the same language. The only thing I hate Canadians for is, they don't have chicken fried steak in Canada for some reason. So, and John Jorge, it's a joke, of course, but the point is that they are essentially American people, and what Trump does domestically, that's the other thing today. The fact that he stamped finally on the DEI, all this insanity of the woke politics, that's a positive. But again, it's not so much him. He doesn't really run country. Stephen Miller and the group of his advisors, they run the country. So, and that's net positive. Positive of dealing with the Somalian kindergartens. which is essentially laundromat and fraud. And so there's a lot of positive in this case. And also they dealing with the issue of the illegal immigration. These are positive movements. This is what was supposed to be done 20 years ago to give United States a chance to continue as the country and eventually coming to some senses and becoming the one of number of the superpowers and who designed the new world. And if you look at this larger picture, so to speak, it's a mixed one. So, but yeah, the United States will have to deal with the issue, which is obviously being controlled by Israel. But we'll have to wait and see. After Charlie Kirk have been assassinated, a lot of things are beginning to happen in the United States. So. Overall, it's mixed category, but obviously, economic situation in the United States is not good, to put it mildly. And how to fix it, I don't think they know how to fix it. Hence, this, even attempts to charge director, basically the head of the Federal Resources. It's like, wow, never seen that before. So, but everything, happens once in a while. So,
Yeah. Andre, before wrapping up, I forgot to ask you, in the few days ago, if you remember, the United States was preparing to attack Iran. Suddenly, they have decided they're not going to do that, and Israel said we are not prepared, as was mentioned, for this war. What are they? Because as far as I know, the United States has given them the latest, air defense system, which is the
well,
THAAD system
they
to
failed in
Israel.
the they failed the last time. United States doesn't have anything new, really. They put THAAD there. It shot off within a week. They're more than a quarter of available armor missiles, and so with no significant effect. So that tells you everything you need to know about the air defense of the United States. So, and yeah, Israel knows. And that is why they have been classifying all kinds of the visuals from the first time, because obviously it sustained gigantic damage, which was dealt by Iran. And Iranians stated that this time we're not going to stop. And that means a physical annihilation. Iran can flatten Tel Aviv if they decide to do it. So, and the Israelis know this. That's when Vladimir Putin actually stepped in. That was Russia who was mediating between Israel and Iranian and saying that and they settled, we do not want to attack each other. Good, good. Nobody wants to, Israelis also to die for no reason, just because the Netanyahu and those, fanatics there want to kill, Iranian, heads of state, and basically they want to destroy Iran. No, this is not how it works. And this was a very positive that Iran and Israel agreed on that with the mediation of Vladimir Putin personally, evidently, because he has a good rapport with Netanyahu. So, and that's good. Nobody wants any kind of war. And how long it will last, I don't know. But as long as it lasts, it's good. It's peace is always better. Bad peace better than good war. Let's put it this way. And
Yeah.
this is, in a sense, some kind of the temporary peace between Israel and Iran, and it's good.
Yeah. The other thing, Andre, was the earthquake that was registered by seismograph close to Dimona, the nuclear power plant in Israel. It was an earthquake being registered by this. You
Yeah.
know, do you think that Israel is gonna? It's unbelievable. I don't know if that would come to the mind of Netanyahu, because this is a leader who is, his days are numbered,
Yeah.
and he knows
Well,
that.
he's desperate
That's
not to
why
get
he
behind.
may do he may do desperate, moves.
Yeah, I
If
know,
you
but I don't think it will come to this. So, plus again, I don't know what he's going to gain. He will be essentially declared the military criminal, war criminal, and criminal against humanity, and that will be the end of Israel, literally the end. So it's shouldn't, and I don't think it will happen. Plus, again, you probably remember that even the Iranian guards of the Islamic Revolution, the core, they showed the videos of agents basically being penetrating the Israeli nuclear program. So it would, it takes two to tango, but two can do it. So and who knows what is going on. I'm pretty sure Iran is extremely well informed about all those motions in Israel, including its military and nuclear facilities. So, and hopefully nothing bad will come out of this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrei, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
My pleasure.
Yeah. See you
Bye
soon, Andrei. Bye
bye.
bye.
Bye.